Well, as we head into Christmas, Australia teeters on the edge of a downward spiral of economic impoverishment that will take us decades to recover from. It's called socialism. Already, some of our energy bosses are starting to realise just how incredibly dangerous this Albanese government is, even going so far as to label Albanese's interventions into the energy market as Soviet style. Believe me, kiddies and millennials, that is not a compliment, although many of you foolishly think it is. Sadly, and here's the real tragedy in Australia over the last 2 decades, the mainly coalition governments in Canberra, and certainly all the Labor and Liberal state governments, sat idly by as young Australians have been brainwashed into believing in the supposed benefits of socialism over what they have been repeatedly taught are the evils of small government and free market capitalism, as epitomised by Reagan and Thatcher. This graph, commissioned by the CIS a couple of years ago, showed 58% of millennials were favourable towards socialism. It's probably higher than that now. Indeed, I was shocked one evening a couple of years ago at dinner when a relative of mine who was enjoying a stellar career in the construction business remarked that she thought capitalism was inherently wrong and that socialism was the only enlightened way forward. I was shocked not so much by this political naivety, one expects out of the young, but as an ex-ad man, shocked at just how effectively socialism has repackaged and remarketed itself to a generation of idealistic young Australians. I used to be on a great show called The Gruen Transfer, where there was a segment called The Pitch, in which an ad agency would be given something truly repugnant to try and sell. It was a lot of fun, as ad men and women attempted to put lipstick on a dog turd, or whatever the expression is. But the way in which the left in this country, Labor, the Greens, the unions, our teachers, the woke corporations and so on, have resold what must surely be one of the vilest products of all time, socialism, is simply astonishing. Socialism is the greatest lie humans have yet invented with which to deceive their fellow men and women. The lie runs basically like this. There are many things that are bad in the world, and so in order to overcome them, you must allow the government to take control of all aspects of your lives, like a loving parent, including your ability to feed yourself, your ability to enjoy yourself, your shelter and your working life, such as it may be, and your ability to safely raise a family. Once you have handed all of that over to the government will magically create paradise on earth, a socialist utopia of pleasure for all, a neo-Marxist nirvana, where all our problems disappear and the government takes care of us all. Oh, did we mention there's just one catch? Socialism relies on everybody doing exactly as they are told, or else. You see socialism in action, corroding our future. You see it every single day now. The constant drumbeat is that if only the government would do more, spend more on this or that, hand out more and more economic goodies to whoever can cry victimhood the loudest. I never thought in my lifetime anyone in Australia, the most prosperous, free, advanced, resource-rich land of opportunity on earth, could take socialism seriously, other than a few daft academics or grungy uni students walking down Oxford Street. But it is now all around us in the common ideas that are discussed and debated on talkback shows, radio, in the media. These last few weeks have been an absolute classic, where after 2 decades of allowing successive Labor and, shamefully, coalition governments to inflict serious damage on our energy markets by demonising fossil fuels, signing up to net zero, spruiking useless renewables, our political and media class are suddenly demanding that the government do something to stop prices going through the roof, which they were always going to do. And their only solution, getting the government to start placing legal restrictions on prices at the same time as handing out free money to consumers to pay the bills. Socialism. Remember, nowhere on earth has socialism or communism ever worked successfully. At best, you get a slow lowering of standards across the board. That's at best. a lowering of living standards, a gradual deterioration and decline in infrastructure and public services as bloated bureaucrats, preening administrators and petty autocrats proliferate, leeches on the ever-dwindling public purse. But that's on a good day. On a bad day, socialism morphs into absurdism, with bizarre rules and contradictory regulations preventing the very things they are supposed to be encouraging. And then, when the rules fail to deliver the promised nirvana, the public is blamed and the baton-wielding authoritarians step in to enforce the rules. Power becomes the socialists' drug, stifling genuine innovation, stifling enterprise or inspiration. Red and increasingly green tape strangles the lifeblood out of small business. We are already seeing that every day in Australia. How is it we managed in such a short space of time to transform the vibrant, go-getter Australia of the 60s, 70s and 80s into the Australia of today, where you can't say this, you can't write that, you can't start this business, you dare not think that, or whatever? Where are the inspirational Aussies out there conquering the world in sports, the arts and in business like we used to do? Instead of building things up to create opportunity and wealth for all, we are tearing everything down. From our proud pioneer history, which built the nation, to tearing down coal-fired power stations that gave us our prosperity. This Christmas, I know I say this every year, you have to talk to your kids and your grandkids about what many of them risk throwing away altogether and how dangerous this pernicious woke culture, woke is just the clever rebranding of good old-fashioned socialism, really is. Ultimately, it's up to our kids to build their own future. But the tragedy is they are building that future on a foundation of deceptions and lies taught to them by activist teachers, left-wingers, propagandists, and an intellectually lazy and bone-idle media. At some point over the summer, encourage discussion within the family about the role of governments, encourage debate about individual freedoms and inspiration, explain that the bigger and more pervasive governments are allowed to become, the less free every individual becomes. If your kids want to know what socialism actually looks like, remind them. The worst of the COVID lockdowns, mask wearing and restrictions, mandatory this and that, not being allowed to go here or there, having to show a pass every 5 minutes, people dobbing you in, even neighbours and family. That's what lies ahead if we carry on with this dangerous socialist experiment. Indeed, it was during COVID that the socialists realised they could easily divide Australians into two distinct tribes, those who would comply unquestioningly and even the most absurd rules and regulations, and those who would not. And as is always the way, there quickly became only one path to deal with those who said no.
Media!
Doing stuff now, and okay, they're shooting. They're now shooting.
I know it may not be the ideal conversation to have as you're pulling the Christmas crackers, but you need to clearly explain the difference between free market capitalism and the welfare mentality. Explain to them that capitalism is not some great evil, it is merely the act of freely giving your money in exchange for something you value. And explain that socialism is ultimately having the government take increasing control of your money. The money you earn through your hard work, and giving it to someone else so that they don't have to do anything. I was discussing socialism with a good friend of mine the other evening at dinner, and she reminded me of the story about the guy who was driving some flash car and a young socialist sneered, "I wonder how many people could have been fed for the money that car cost." The man with the expensive car replied, "I'm not sure exactly. It fed a lot of families in the town where the car was built. It fed the people who make the tyres. It fed the people who made the components that went into it. It fed the people in the copper mine who mined the copper for the wires. It fed people who make the trucks that haul the copper out of the copper mines. It fed the trucking people who hauled it from the plant to the dealer, and it fed the people working at the dealership and their families. But I have to admit, I don't exactly know how many people it fed. As has been shown time and time again, when you buy something, you not only put money in someone's pocket, but you also give them dignity for their skills. But when you simply hand someone money willy-nilly for nothing, you rob them of that dignity. You deprive them of the opportunity to develop their own skills. Capitalism is merely the monetization of individual choice and personal freedom, yours. Socialism is the theft of individual wealth and freedom in order to finance a gargantuan government machine. Capitalism encourages personal freedom through the acquisition of personal property. Socialism turns the individual into the property of the state. Capitalism rewards, socialism penalizes. Capitalism allows you to soar, socialism crushes you underfoot. Here's a thought: if you're all choosing a fun movie to watch on Boxing Day together, you could do a lot worse and pick David Lean's masterpiece, Dr. Zhivago. It's all about the joys of socialism when they first tried it out in Russia in 1917. Bizarrely, the odd scene or two reminded me of Victoria only a couple of years ago. Merry Christmas.
Oh, Lord, this is an awful time to be alive.
No.
What are we going to do?
I don't know.
Wouldn't it have been lovely if we'd met before?
I think we may go mad if we think about all that.